Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Michael J.
How goes it this week?
Groovy. How you doing?
I am overjoyed. I mean, Amonkhet spoilers are upon us. I mean, we've already had this week the opportunity to unveil the awesome new Masterpieces card frame with Team Top Level's own
Invocations, if you will.
They're called Invocations?
Yeah. That's one of the things we discussed yesterday. They're invocations this time. The Kaladesh ones were the Masterpieces, and they were the Masterpiece, like, as a collection. They were the Masterpiece collection. This new thing is like the Invocation collection. I think it's Invocation.
Oh, I wish I hadn't written the words Masterpiece on our website, but oh well. Anyway, looks awesome.
And we had the we had the super duper, like, honestly, absolutely crushing it again this year, Pro Tour champion Craig Wesco on the show.
On the big reveal, yeah. I mean, if there was anyone in the world right now, you're like, hey, I need somebody to play White Weenie to save my life, would you pick Craig Wesco?
He is an invaluable resource for not only playing but also brewing and tuning and sideboarding white aggressive decks. You know,
it's an art unto itself. Anyway,
but we're here this week with actual preview cards, lots and lots of preview cards, spoilers, if you will, that some of which seem poised to be potential players.
Oh, I think so, for sure.
Did want to give a shout out to John Sheehan for supporting us on Patreon. Major thanks, man.
Thanks so much, John. Thanks to all of our patrons for helping the universe to have Top Level Podcast each and every week. All of our loyal patrons, we are so
rock on.
We're so warm inside. Speaking of warm inside, what about Glorybringer?
Man, are you drunk? No. Is that where the warm inside's coming from?
I mean, he's got fire inside. He's fire. He is warm. It's coming out. He's exerting fire.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I think you might be just drunk with power. If you got yourself a Glorybringer in play and your opponent, their deck didn't. This guy. This is. I mean, obviously times have changed, and it's not like Volcanic Dragon made an impact.
I think I may have played Volcanic Dragon in Constructed deck. I mean, that was a long time ago, right?
Yeah,
we did not have Royal Spadewing back then.
Right. Like, I played Volcanic Dragon at a Pro Tour back, way back in Paris, The thing about Glorybringer, though, 3 red, 4/4, flying haste. You may exert Glorybringer as it attacks. When you do, it deals 4 damage to target non-dragon creature and opponent controls. So what that means is that when you attack, you're committing for it to not untap next turn.
Well, so what we can do is just specifically rattle off the exert description from Blake Rasmussen's article back on the Mothership earlier this week. Exert allows creatures to give a little more effort to produce unusually good results. Just like when you exert in real life. You make the decision whether to exert a creature as you declare it as an attacker. If you choose to have it exert, an ability will trigger and grant you some bonus. As a trade-off, the creature won't untap during your next turn. It's tired, needs a nap, attack more later. You don't have to exert the creature as it is attacks. If you don't, no ability will trigger, and it will untap normal during your next turn. Note, as you declare attackers is the only time you can have it exert. You can't wait until later in the turn and then exert it. When your next untapped step rolls around, if the creature you exerted is untapped, nothing happens, and the exertion costs you nothing. Maybe you found a different way to untap it, or maybe you gave it vigilance. You are clever. So, this card is similarly costed to a Stormbreath Dragon, right? A 4/4 flying haste creature in red for 5 mana. And then it's got an ability. Well, I guess Stormbreath Dragon had 2 abilities. But this one's got an ability, and they're just good against different things, right? Stormbreath Dragon was awesome against, Azorius Charm. right? Is awesome against control decks if you got it down. I think this is like a sweet mid-range, anti-mid-range card.
I mean, so to start with, just to be clear, Stormbolt Dragon is also just a 4/4 flying haste creature. That's pretty awesome against things in general. You know, like...
I'm just saying what their specialty is, right? Like, yes, both of them are
well,
good.
yeah, the point is that the 4/4 flying haste is already interesting, where it doesn't take that much more to... Like, even when you have the floor where you never activate the monstrosity or... and your opponent's not white, it was already, like, at least, like, not embarrassing by any stretch of the imagination. But you were riding those other abilities... the option of them at some point to get that extra mileage to make it a dominating Tier 1 card. Glorybringer, the option is that you can commit it for this attack so that you just get a straight-up Flame Slash outside of hitting other dragons to avoid the silly Glorybringer on Glorybringer violence. But you get a free removal spell that can take down... an awful lot of different creatures.
It's awesome, right? Like, even if you just play Glorybringer the first turn, you cast it for 5, swing in, it's dealing 4 to the opponent and dealing 4 to one of the opponent's creatures. If it was just a card that dealt, like, 8 damage split 2 ways, like, maybe you wouldn't play it just at 5 mana, but you'd think twice, or you'd say to yourself, are there applications where I would want a card like this? You know, that would be something that you might think to yourself. Maybe the cost isn't right for you at 5 if you only get to do it once, but that's not the situation, right? Like, that's just the floor. I mean, here we have a much better situation, like 4 turn, haste, all kinds, you know, or you could just kill like 10 creatures over the course of the game, potentially.
I mean, this is a Flame Tongue Kavu, right? Like, for 1 mana more, you're getting haste, which basically makes up, not all the way, but it most of the way makes up for the extra mana. And when you factor in it also has flying and has 2 extra points of toughness, you're already to some Flame Tongue Kavu space. And then you factor in that you can run the rebuy. You can Glorybringer again the next time you have a chance, right?
I mean, it's substantially
it does have a cost.
Better than Flame Tongue Kavu for 2 reasons. One, there were times, I know I was in this situation, I'm sure you were, even if you're not going to admit it, where you had to Flame Tongue your own dude. You just say pants.
I was pride. I did it all the time.
You say pants, and then you play Flame Tongue Kavu.
No, I don't know about anything about that.
You wouldn't say pants? Because, like,
never.
Flame Tongue Kavu is basically just a creature enchantment, right? Like, you killed your bird or whatever, and then you got a Flame Tongue Kavu.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say that.
Well, like
it speaks for itself.
All right, well, the pants had only 2 toughness, but you would pants. But that's one thing. And then secondly, Flame Tongue Kavu was so contextual. Like, you had to Flame Tongue Kavu when the opponent had a guy to kill, right? Glorybringer, you can just do it whenever. Like, you don't have to wait around.
Yeah. And there is the downside, though, of when you actually 4 damage something, your Glorybringer's not going to untap next turn. Now, the upside is that it already attacked this turn. Yeah. You're already, like, ahead of the game. So, I think there's no question. This is a very exciting card out the gate. But there's places where it matches up well, and then there's also some synergies that day one are already making it even they give it like much more potential than may even appear on the surface.
I mean, there's one thing I love about it. When I first saw this card, I was just like,
Gideon. Right?
In one, Patrick. You got it. If you're on the play, he comes in, kills Gideon, and kills the knight he rode in on.
Yes.
All at once. Dead.
Glorybringer,
and dead.
Glorybringer is sending a freaking message to Gideon. Like, there is no joking around. Glorybringer is very, very serious about Gideon and killing Gideon. In addition to that, it does some other stuff. But
that's a really good thing to do.
Yeah. So here's a part of Glorybringer I think is kind of spiffy. What do you think of always watching? Always watching.
Well, always watching. That's basically going to make it so that Glorybringer doesn't tap when he attacks, right?
Right. So you can actually just rock his exert ability or her exert ability perpetually, as long as there's victims, you know.
Oh my god, I hate that idea so much.
Why do you hate it?
I love it because it seems awesome, because also Glorybringer would be even bigger, right? So, whatever being a 4/4, always watching is going to buff Glorybringer for the actual just damaging opponents' faces or damaging planeswalkers, as the case may be. But I kind of hate it because I kind of hate the idea of having such expensive white and red cards playing together. Like, I feel like always watching is the hammer that you add to the white weenies, not like the bottom that you add to the expensive guys. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just phenomenal. I could see it being phenomenal. I mean, are we going to play with Nahiri? Nahiri and Glorybringer might be friends. Probably not. Maybe.
I don't know. Why do you say probably not?
I mean, it's kind of like, because Nahiri giving people haste, Glorybringer already has haste. That's all.
Yeah, but I just mean Nahiri is just like a good card. You can just play it. And Nahiri has extra, and I'm sure we'll get to this later, but Nahiri has extra value, the fact that she exiles. And now that there are these Embalm cards, that's kind of interesting, right?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I have a lot to say about Embalm guys, but Glorybringer, what else? What else is up?
Okay,
I mean,
so
always watching might be spectacular. I don't love it off the top of my head, but I'm willing to be wrong on this one.
How do you feel about Retreat to Hagra?
Retreat to Hagra. Is that the black retreat?
Yep. Landfall, target creature gets +1/+0 and death touch. And then, or alternatively, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life.
So I'm guessing you care about the death touch more, yeah?
Right. Well, yeah, and you do a damage extra, too. So you're getting in there for 5, and then also you can terminate things. Are you into that? Or is that too...
I mean, I think Glorybringer...
Is that you fancy?
I think he's terminating a lot of guys as it is, right? So I think there's basically 2 kinds of guys right now. Guys that Glorybringer kills and Ishkana. Or guys that are indestructible, right? You're not gonna retreat to Hagra Ulamog, for example, right? So he's already indestructible. I think that's too much. I'm willing to always watching Retreat to Hagra. Not exciting to me.
No?
No.
Okay. Here's an interesting interaction. This isn't like a combo, so to speak, but it is an interesting interaction. Archangel Avacyn.
I mean, that's a lot of 5s.
No, against.
Oh, against.
I think Archangel Avacyn is one of the biggest gainers.
Oh, I mean, it's spectacular against Glorybringer, right? So you come with Glorybringer, you choose to exert it, right? So it's going to not untap no matter what. Target a dude, Archangel Avacyn comes down, saves the dude, and then probably just spanks Glorybringer in combat, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Archangel Avacyn was... Well, didn't I already thought that she was the Creature of the Year last year? I think she's great in this fight.
Now... Alternatively, though, consider if you don't lead with the Glorybringer, you do something else, and they play Archangel Avacyn.
Now, Glorybringer can kill Archangel Avacyn, you're saying?
Right. So they Archangel Avacyn on your turn, and then on the next turn you play Glorybringer, and you go upstairs and hit Archangel Avacyn for 4, and then she can't even block you anymore. So it's actually an interesting chess match. I think Archangel Avacyn has slightly the better of it in general, but Glorybringer has some very, very real counterplay.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think that it's a chess match. It could go either way. I would agree that Archangel Avacyn has the advantage. It reminds me, actually, of Pulse of the Fields against Pulse of the Forge. You ever play that fight?
Yep.
Yeah, so, whose pulses are going to win. I think on paper, Pulse of the Forge was supposed to be winning that fight, but in practice, Pulse of the Fields would typically win.
All right, you ready? Here's an interesting one for you. Eldrazi Obligator.
Eldrazi Obligator.
If you have your...
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, you see, you're picking up...
You can take an exerted Glorybringer, and...
You can also take your own. You can play a Glorybringer... Exert it to kill something. Your opponent's like, okay, I can rest for a turn. On your next turn, since you have 5 mana anyway, you play an Eldrazi Obligator, untap the Glorybringer by surprise, and get him again.
I mean, bring for 7 also.
Oh, of course.
I like that. I mean,
that's actually that's decent, right?
Yeah, I thought Eldrazi Obligator was one of the best cards of its set, and then obviously it made an immediate impact. It won the Pro Tour that it immediately followed, right? But then we haven't seen it in Standard in forever. I'd love to see that guy come back.
And of course, go ahead.
We have like an overabundance of 5 casting cost giant haste guys, if you think about it, right? Like, Glorybringer's potentially fighting with Reality Smasher for a spot.
Mm-hmm. Now, there's also obviously stuff like Kari Zev's Expertise. Kari Zev's Expertise has extra mileage when you actually care about untapping your Glorybringer.
Love it. I love the deck that I'm imagining actually already now. This is like tons of just heavy-handed haste, right? Like, you're just coming in, relentless offense, but like every single card that you're tapping in the red zone has a thud. It's just like thud. Like it has it's like a stomp and a footprint. It's like meat slapping against a counter. Every single thing. You know what I mean? Like it has some weight to it.
Kiora, Master of Depths. You can use her +1 ability to untap 1 target creature and 1 target land.
So that's just it's pretty cool because you can get I guess you don't really get Glorybringer out fast, right?
Well, you can. It's one or the other. But next turn, you can use it to get Glorybringer out, even if you don't have a 5th land.
Yeah, that'll work.
And then next turn, you can untap it.
You could do it even also with only 1 red, right? That's kind of cool.
Right. But then also what's interesting is that Kiora's milling ability, the reveal the top 4, you can put a creature and a land from among them into your hand. The rest go to your graveyard, which has extra purpose with Embalm.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a lot of colors to me right now.
All right, here's one for you. Lightning Runner.
Lightning Runner.
It's a little ambitious. It's 3 red, in keeping with your 5-cost red haste creatures.
Yeah.
It's 3 red, 2/2 double strike haste. When it attacks, you get energy, and then you may pay 8 energy. And if you do, untap all creatures you control, and after this, you'll have an additional combat phase.
Love it. It's not good.
If only it was just not exactly also 5.
Yeah, I mean, like there are a lot of scenarios where this might be good, but the actual facts of the matter are it's not good.
Okay, it's probably not good enough. This next one, it's probably not good enough. But do you think there's any merit to any kind of a vehicles-based strategy using Mobile Garrison?
I mean, when
you attack with your Mobile Garrison,
you started with the vehicles, I was just like, yes, I can think of a lot of things where this might be good, and then you switched it on me. Mixed it up.
You're not that big into that one?
No. I mean, will you tell me what you were specifically thinking? I mean...
no, you can untap the dragon.
No, I know. I got it. I mean, isn't that kind of a lot of work? Like, the thing is, Glorybringer is half a card some of the time, right? But it's a full card a lot of the time. But you're now committing a Mobile Garrison for relative... Okay. There's not even a guarantee that you need it, right? That's
okay. One thing. Okay. This next one, this is actually intended to be real.
Okay.
Actually intended to be real. Maybe. Yeah. Long shot, but Retreat to Coral Helm.
Oh, well, that card has had some, substantially positive impact already. So you're talking about the blue retreat that you landfall, and then you can either scry 1 or tap or untap target creature. So this is an easy way to untap the glorious Glorybringer.
It's also an accelerator, though. Now, it doesn't exactly perfectly line up because there are no 1-cost accelerators at the moment. But if you were to play, say, like a Birds of Paradise, well, you need to have a creature in play for it to untap. So, if you had a Birds of Paradise, you could go bird into Retreat to Coral Helm into the dragon. But since there's nothing like Birds of Paradise, the Retreat to Coral Helm isn't actually getting you ahead of schedule with the 2-cost accelerators beyond making you not need that 5th mana.
I actually like this idea a lot.
I'm not sure it's bad.
Well, partially because you could just play cards like Evolving Wilds and tap Gideon during their turn, which is actually kind of awesome. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe it wouldn't have been powerful enough on its own, but
if there's a cumulative effect, if you get enough little synergies different places, it might be interesting.
It's kind of expensive to commit a card to those abilities, right? But it's not nothing. I mean, I think if just tapping potential attackers could be sweet. Also, I mean, there are a lot of ways that you can kind of do an explosive turn, right? Using Retreat to Coralhelm, but I'm not sure what you would do with it. You gave me plus 20 utils of advantage, so now what? That's the thing that I'm just concerned about. Isn't there that card that's just like replenish for lands? Like theoretically, you could replenish for lands and then do something, but I'm not sure what you would want.
Okay, how about Stitcher's Graft? Going a different way with it.
I mean, what do you want to do with the Stitcher's Graft?
3 extra damage. So the drawback with Stitcher's Graft is that if you ever move it, the creature dies. If you were using Stitcher's Graft as some sort of part of your improvised package because you're just doing some other stuff, one of the cool it's a little thing. It's not enough to build the whole deck on, but a little thing. Stitcher's Graft is hard to move around because the creature would die, and it has the drawback of when you attack with the creature, it doesn't untap next turn.
But that's already subsumed in the Glorybringer's other ability, right?
Correct. And also, many of the synergies that cheat the Glorybringer's drawback from Exert also cheat the Stitcher's Graft drawback. For instance, if you have let's say you just had a deck that has Always Watching in it, or any other thing where it's letting you just give your guy Vigilance or untap it, right? Now you're just getting Stitcher's Graft as this incredibly undercosted equipment where you're getting, it's just 1 to play, 2 to use, and he gives it +3/+3. That's just very, very efficient.
I suppose that takes 2 turns off the clock by itself, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's fast, and it's also just, it doesn't have to be the only plan you have going on,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm a buyer of that one. But
I don't know. I'm not convinced that you can't use Stitcher. We'll see. I think Stitcher's Graft's a little bit of an underrated card anyway.
Well, I'll tell you this. If Glorybringer gets to be popular and we have Glorybringer on Glorybringer fights, and I understand that Glorybringers can't directly kill each other in this scenario, but if that's a thing, I think just some extra size might be a thing because you can get guys big enough that they're less vulnerable.
Here's one for you. Oh, actually, another part of that synergy, Stitcher's Graft has some really cool interactions with Karizev's Expertise. Because you can actually play Karizev's Expertise, steal your opponent's creature, play the Stitcher's Graft for free from the Karizev's Expertise, then you pay 2 to move the Stitcher's Graft onto the creature you stole, bash them for oodles, and then move the Stitcher's Graft off.
Oh, I like that. That's kind of...
Now, that's kind of expensive, sure, but there's also a few sideways things you could do. You could play the Kazul guy or whatever. There's
I think it's fine. You don't have to roll 12 every time, right? You could just get by rolling 8, and then sometimes you get to put it all together in a single turn. You look like a genius. But, if the cards are just all pretty good most of the time, and sometimes they're spectacular all at once, that's fine.
This next one is a very legitimate. It's relatively modest, but it'll do some sweet things. Blessed Alliance. It's the 2-cost, escalate 2, choose 1 or more.
Does.
Target player gains 4 life. Oh, I know, but just for everybody listening in, doesn't have it in front of them. Target player gains 4 life, untap up to 2 target creatures, or target opponent sacrifices an attacking creature. So this is actually, it ends up just flowing together. You attack, you kill something, your guy's locked down. When your opponent tries to attack you, so the next turn comes around, or on your opponent's turn, you could actually, if you just have the mana like crazy, if it's just like all over the place, or if it's like the second time the dragon is attacked, so you just have the mana, you can actually just, when your opponent attacks you, make them sacrifice a creature, and also untap up to 2 creatures, which could both potentially be exerted. And if you have the mana, you could also just gain 4 life. Because
I think that's really cool. I mean, actually, it makes me like the always watching idea better now. I mean, you could just have like the mid-rangiest red-white deck. Like, this deck sounds pretty good to me in my imagination. Like, Blessed Alliance is just a good card. I mean, people play it in...
It is just a good card.
People play it in Modern. They play it in white-blue or white-blue-red-based decks as early-game defense. And here it has a massive synergy. Especially if there's multiple awesome exert... Or you could have 2 Glorybringers. I don't know, something like that. I mean, also you could just have a spectacular amount of impact in a single turn, right? Like, what if you just did 2 abilities and you got your opponent to sacrifice a creature and you untapped Glorybringer and another dude in combat and got blocks in? Like, it's all good.
Yeah. All right, so here's one for you.
I think you play 4 in that deck, right? Seems awesome.
It could. I mean, it's going to end up... Partly, it's going to depend on what else is in this set, because... it's very possible there ends up being just a variety of attractive options.
I mean, it's a fast defense card, though. That's the thing. That's I think a lock you get to unhook.
Yep. So, what about any of the bounce stuff? Do any of the bounce cards do enough to get you interested in potentially? Bouncing your own dragon. Like, what about the one that's 1 cost that can like power up one of your lands sometimes if you really wanted to?
Well, I was even thinking just the one that's 1 cost and then you scry.
Yeah, that one. It has the drawback of it can only bounce something that's tapped.
Yeah, but it's gonna be tapped. I'm pretty sure. Like,
hey, you can just there.
Glory bring them. And then bounce them, bring some more glory. I think that's actually pretty reasonable to me, especially since it's so not expensive,
Yeah. It curves right, too.
Yeah, and that's also just a good card, I think. Like, it's not like a great card. Like, it's not Vapor Snag, but I think it's just a good card that in the right context, you would just play it. You'd be like, all right, this isn't the best, but I'm otherwise going to take 5 from that oncoming, haste creature or something. Just pick them up.
In particular, if we see a world with less of the vigilance creatures, because I think that's one of the things that's been holding it back a little bit, is that right now it's not exactly at its best versus Heart of Kirin or Archangel Avacyn.
Oh man, you had to mention Heart of Kirin. Now I feel like I don't like Glorybringer as much as I did a minute ago, because Heart of Kirin is only 2, and he's just as big. All right.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There are some ways to deal with Heart of Kirin if that's your jam. There's definitely ways to do that. But the fact that Glorybringer just hits Gideon so hard,
I love it.
Anyway, I just think this is an exciting card, definitely. I wanted to see what you thought of actually another 5-cost flyer. Archfiend of Ifnir, 3 black for a 5/4 flyer. Whenever you cycle or discard another card, put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponent controls. And then it also has cycling, but it doesn't trigger its own ability. You'd have to have it in play, and if you had a second Archfiend, then it would work. But if you have this in play, it's like a living, breathing astral slot, except instead of blinking one thing out, you just literally -1/-1 counter all your opponent's stuff.
So, I mean...
It's just Massacre Worm from here on out.
I think that the existence of this card is just an implication that there's going to be some cycling stuff that we can play with in the set, right? There are no other spoiled cycling cards that we've seen, are there?
No. Nope.
But it's interesting to me that it's whenever you cycle or discard another card. They could have just said whenever you discard another card, right? Because cycling is a discard ability. But I think this card is pretty good.
Yeah, but I think they wanted to call out. They wanted to make sure it was clear that cycling counts as discarding.
I mean, it's elsewhere on the same card face though. So, I think this card's pretty good. Couple of reasons. One, this is a non-legendary 5 casting cost 5/4 flyer. Like already, you're just like, all right, let me look at this card. Right? You don't necessarily have to love it, but it's in the same league as cards like Baneslayer Angel, Archangel Avacyn, about the same cost, about the same size. Right? Like, is there text that makes this interesting beyond that? And then, even if you didn't have the -1/-1 counter text, the cycling 2 text is very interesting, right? So
you're saying this is better than Barkhide's, like the just like 5 cost 4/4 vanilla with cycling?
Well, I never played Barkhide Mauler in Constructed, but I played a lot of Twisted Abomination in Constructed. A lot.
Dude, Fluctuator. Wow!
So, just having that ability, cycling 2, that's not nothing. But then I think you put it all together, like, this is the kind of card, if you're the opponent, you don't get rid of it, I mean, it's gonna mess you up. It doesn't have to kill your creatures to win every combat, right? Like, that's one thing. And then separately, if you're like weenies, if you're all like 2/1s and 3/1s, they're all dead, right? You can't, there's no coming back. If this doesn't die to Fatal Push. I mean, it does. It obviously dies to other things, but not to Fatal Push. And
well, that's actually I think one of the interesting things is both the Archfiend and the Dragon are exactly optimized for dodging the push.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about Archfiend of Ifnir is that you don't probably play it in the same deck as Glorybringer. Because I like them both. I think this card's very good. I think that when you see like Lightning Rift and Astral Slide, which are kind of the iconic permanents in play that really benefit from cycling. Like Lightning Rift was
Stoic Champion.
It was unambiguously the best card of its era in terms of its block and how impactful it was. Astral Slide kind of was like, oh, maybe I'll play 2 copies of this card, alongside Astral Slide. Maybe, some people played 4. Most people only played 2, and it was kind of like the little brother. When Bob Maher won that Grand Prix, I don't think he played any Astral Slides. But then later, like a year later, it was all about Green-White Slide, and that Astral Slide really came into its own as this kind of phenomenal card that had previously been considered second fiddle to Lightning Rift. And
the printing of Solemn Simulacrum also really kind of helped, I think.
But my macro point is, if you have these cards that are only 1 or 2 activation cost, instant speed, have the text draw a card on them, and then you just have these static abilities that are just sitting there after an initial investment that do something. I think that as long as you're given time, those cards they're just gonna have a snowball effect. And we've seen many even Stoic Champion, many instances of cards like that having huge impacts on a variety of formats. Even including Extended. I think this card is probably going to be good enough. That's my.
You got this. You think this card's going to be good enough for Modern?
No. I'm just saying those kinds of cards have impacted formats as big as Extended. People played like Naya Slide and Extended. That was a thing. They would play Green-White Slide, Red-Green Slide.
We'll see. It's really going to come down to the support they have. If there's enough support, then I can see this. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think this card's good enough unless there's enough support for a moderately dedicated cycling strategy. But if there's enough support, then this card will become. It'll go from like good, and it goes from good enough to great real quick.
So yeah. I think kind of the implication. What you have here is you have to have a critical mass of cycling cards, right? Just cards that have the keyword cycling, or maybe land cycling. Maybe they'll have that in the set. Who knows? But I don't necessarily think that you would need to have other cycling theme static enablers, right?
Correct.
But just enough agree. Cycling, like land.
Just enough cycling. Spells. Okay. Honestly, if they even if they just reprinted the Urza Saga ones, not even the Onslaught ones, the Urza Saga ones that cost 2. Even if they reprinted those,
like Blasted Landscape,
no, but the colored ones, like Polluted Mire or whatever it is, if you got to play with 8 of those in your 2-color cycling deck, and then you have your 4 Archfiends, as long as there's literally just 2 other good cycling cards, I think that might even be enough.
What about runes? Do you think they'd ever reprint runes?
No.
Runes too unfun.
Thematically, I could see it fitting in this world. Unfortunately, I've read the cards. It's not a good idea. It's not. They're not the high point of Magic design.
Yeah.
Rune of Protection Land. I have this situational enchantment that when I don't want to discard it to not do anything, I can put it in place so that from here on out, I can pay mana to protect myself from lands.
I mean, I just remember, not having enough playables and just playing rando runes in limited decks, and then sometimes you would just cold your opponent's entire deck on turn 2.
Dude, I top-8'd with Rune of Protection Land in my deck.
Oh, I won a PTQ with multiple runes in my main.
Whatever you got to seal. Well, I drafted them.
Same.
But, okay, there we go.
Anyway.
So there's another.
Oh, wait,
there's
there is
oh,
another
ahead,
thing,
please.
I think.
Yeah, please.
Which is just subtle on Archfiend of Ifnir. You don't actually need. It's not necessity to have an overabundance of cycling cards. Obviously, that's the cleanest, most obvious way to enable this. But what if you had a bunch of looters or some kind of looter effect?
Well,
that's actually the same thing.
That's where I wanted to go with this. Is the Noose Constrictor? If you just have Noose Constrictor in play, and you play the Archfiend, you're kind of doing it.
Oh man, you could just, woo.
Right? Like you get a bunch of 0 mana -1 to their teams. So like. Imagine if you're discarding cards like Scrap Heap Scrounger, right?
Oh, he's buddies with Madness,
right? So Archfiend, in terms of being able to enable a cycling deck, would take 8 cycling lands and maybe 2 other cycling cards. But you hit the nail on the head. If you don't have the cycling stuff, you can still get a lot out of this. From the fact that it triggers off of discarding, specifically Noose Constrictor.
Archfiend Untapped Cathartic Reunion ain't bad.
Right. If you just Cathartic Reunion, you're going to right out the gate -2/-2 their team.
Yeah, I like it.
Right.
I like it.
And the thing I like about Noose Constrictor, though, is that you can just have Noose Constrictor in play already, play the Archfiend, and get him that turn with no additional mana investment.
Honestly, I've always loved Noose Constrictor as a card, not just because he's so reminiscent of Wild Mongrel, which was a great card in his era, but contextually, Noose Constrictor was just this great card in my testing anyway, when I was playing a lot of blue-green, just to get under Fevered Visions. Like, with some profit,
sure.
Right? You're just like, get in there, brain you a little bit in Fevered Visions. Isn't there also that enchantment that lets you discard to make vampires?
In fact, there's several vampires. I think Archfiend of Ifnir can fit in some kind. Now, I don't know if there's enough support for a vampire deck, but if there is,
what's black and 1, discard a card, and then you can make.
Yeah, of course. But there's also just black. Once per turn, you can discard a card to give all your vampires +1/+1. So if you just have that guy in play, you can give all your vampires +1/+1. While also giving all your opponent's creatures -1/-1. And then there's also the one that you can turn it into a 3-power flyer by discarding a card. There's a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of stuff that you can play out of the graveyard that works well in the graveyard, like Relentless Dead or whatever. There's going to be a variety of things to explore in that space. And I do think that the stuff like Cathartic Reunion is kind of exciting.
Now, speaking of things that you might want to discard. You mentioned Scrap Heap Scrounger, which is such an outstanding 2-drop a minute ago. But I think there's a new one. I don't know if these guys would ever be in the same deck. Maybe they would, but
I think they would.
This is the most exciting card to me of all the cards I've seen so far, which is obviously just the first wave, right? So it's not all the cards yet. But this card is, I think, is awesome. Trueheart Duelist. What do you feel about this guy? So he's
go ahead.
He's white and 1 for a 2/2, so he's like a regular old fresh volunteer for a human warrior. He has an additional ability, which is bonkers to me that they would give him another ability, which is True Heart Duelist can block an additional creature each combat, so he's awesome on D, potentially. Can absorb 2 huge creatures, at least as long as they don't have trample. But then he has this ability Embalm. So Embalm is white and 2. You basically play him out of the graveyard, right?
It's flashback for creatures.
Yeah. So I was just thinking, like...
You actually, what you do is you exile the True Heart Duelist,
and then put it
but then you get a token that is a copy of True Heart Duelist in play. So if the token were to get bounced, then it would be gone. But
this card is like just Call of the Herd. You know, if Call of the Herd is to, you know, I don't know, not Trained Armadon, but something like Trained Armadon, right? This is the Call of the Herd. You know, Fresh Volunteers to Call of the Herd, and I don't know. Call of the Herd was such a great card in its era.
This card is substantially better. I mean, the context is different. So to start with, paying 2 for a 2/2 versus 3 for a 3/3. You might typically, like, there's a lot of draft formats where you'd rather have the 3/3 for 3.
I mean, there are some constructed formats where you'd rather have the 3/3 for 3.
In general, more times than not, a 2/2 for 2 is better than a 3/3 for 3. Additionally, white appreciates this type of thing more than green does. Like, white has all these ways to pump the extra bodies and so on, you know. And then when you're flashing it back, you're paying 3 for an extra 2/2 instead of 4 for an extra 3/3. And then it can block an additional creature each combat, which gives it a disproportionate amount of ability to impact the board.
Well, also a disproportionate amount of ability to get into the graveyard.
And then finally, get into the graveyard with value, too.
Yeah, yeah.
And then finally, on the way in, outside of any tribal types, which is part of the equation too, on the way in, it's an actual creature. So it doesn't necessarily, like, both halves of Call of the Herd can get bounced and stuff.
Yeah,
True
so
Heart Duelist
was in constructed formats with both, like, repulse and repeal, for example.
Now, I do think that there's a hidden drawback in that this card is not quite as busted as it looks.
Yeah, you can't have 2 bodies at the same time.
Exactly. This card, I think, is actually going to get more of its... it's going to be, I think, an important part of the puzzle to either play with sack outlets or discard outlets. More likely discard outlets. But if you're just playing this straight up, I think it's going to be too easy for people to not kill it. And then it's like kind of a bad persist. So I actually don't... True Heart Duelist is not my number 1 out of this week's batch. I think True Heart Duelist could be a completely great card if the context is right. I think that True Heart Duelist... There's a little trickery going on, and the Embalm is not the same thing as Flashback when it comes to the creature needing to actually die first.
Yeah, fully understand and agree. I think the fact that we're getting a mana back is not insignificant.
A mana on both sides.
Yeah.
Mana on both sides is that's
not nothing. What I like about this card is you can play it in a deck. You know, let's say I'm just going to make this up, like Mardu Planeswalkers or blue-white control. It's like really creature poor in game 1. And then you can bring it in out of sideboarding in a variety of situations, right? Like you can bring it into play on turn 2 against beatdown decks where it absorbs a disproportionate amount of damage, right? Like, because you can trade with their 2-drop twice, which is awesome, just to buy you time to get to your powerful cards. But in a pinch, right? Like a pinch could be you're playing against even another control deck, and neither of you have any creatures, and you're both winning with big spells. You just side it in and you just 2-drop them and get 10 damage in before they get their Torrential Gearhulk or whatever to answer it. And I think I think it just creates a really interesting incentive for creature poor decks as well as for just regular grinding, because this is just a great card for just a regular deck that would have guys and would trade in combat and maybe would have a way to get the guys into the graveyard, self-mill, anything like that.
It could. Yeah, it can. I think you're going to want to find some synergies just because there's so many powerful cards here, but one of the synergies that you can really take advantage of is Thalia's Lieutenant. Since Trueheart Duelist is a human, and Thalia's Lieutenant doesn't require you to cast it. It just needs it to enter the battlefield.
Oh, so you get triggers.
So you can get exactly. You can get it coming and going. That's I think that's a very real thing, and that Trueheart Duelist will be an instant auto for human decks, despite how crowded they often are at the 2-drop spot.
I like it.
What did you think of, and this one's, speaking of white cards coming back from the graveyard, what did you think of Dusk Till Dawn? Dusk Till Dawn is a new kind of split card. It's, instead of Dusk and Dawn, Dusk to Dawn, because it's one way and then sideways.
Yeah.
It's basically, so they're split card flashback things of sorts, where it's like flashback. It's actually called Aftermath. But the way Aftermath works is that you play the card one way on the way in. In this case, Dusk is 2 white for a sorcery. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. And then when it's in the graveyard, it has the ability Aftermath. Cast the spell only from your graveyard, then exile it, which is return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. And the Aftermath side of this is 3 white. So on the way in, on turn 4, you can destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. And then on turn 5, you can get back all of your creatures that have power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. I don't know if this is the intuitive way to think about it, but I was just maybe you could just do stuff that you're playing Dawn from the graveyard, right? You don't even play the Dusk side. Maybe with some kind of self-mill or looting or something like that. If there's maybe there's cycling creatures, right? Cheap cycling creatures that are synergistic with Dawn. You'd want to get them back in your hand. You could cycle them, overdraw, get Dawn to the graveyard, and then play Dawn to get those back if you're just going to kind of get a huge critical mass of stuff. I think that's a possibility. I think Dusk obviously has value, though, right? It's a different kind of Wrath. One of the things that's flexibly awesome about Wrath of Gods in general is their ability to defend you in a bunch of different ways. This only gets bigger guys, but that's not bad. It's just different.
I think this card is extremely exciting and potentially very abusable. So you're absolutely right. You can just use it to get back, get a little incremental value or to get extra mileage out of your cycling cards. It's super cool that you can loot it away if you only want the Dawn side, because I think the Dusk side is going to be only medium. It'll have its moments. It has its spots. It's definitely a nice option, right? But this card has an incredible ceiling. So the first combo that I would encourage you to consider, how do you feel about this card and Spell Queller? Imagine that your deck just has some cards that are like Sylvan Advocate, Spell Queller, the Duskwatch Recruiter. If your deck just has some super dope cards in it that have a 2 power or less when they're in your graveyard.
Well, these are all the cards you're naming are also hella high impact, right?
Absolutely. They're each awesome in their own right and high impact in the game, where you're actually playing. And they often cluster together anyway, right?
Oh yeah, that's awesome, right? That's you kind of just build your deck so that the Wrath only affects the opponent. That's awesome.
And you have a Brain Geyser.
Yeah. I love it, Patrick.
That's a very, very potent refill. Incredibly potent. And it helps make clear why it is that... it's a good thing Reflector Mage is banned, right? No, No, seriously, like, this card would be really messed up with Reflector Mage. It's not like Felidar Guardian wouldn't already be messed up, but that brings me to my next point. This gets back Felidar Guardian. That's like...
I don't know. I'm, like, almost speechless. I think this is, like... I think that what you brought up is awesome. Just spectacular.
If your deck has Whirler Virtuosos and Felidar Guardians and all kinds of that kind of jazz, you might really be in the market for a Brain Geyser like this.
I mean, is there a
and
deck
that's not
that
even
plays
counting
Whirler Virtuosos and Felidar Guardians in the same deck?
Already made.
Does such a deck exist?
And that's not even counting the fact that if you are using any amount of self-mill, you know, like, or looting, like whether it's Cathartic Reunion, if it's, you know, like we mentioned earlier, Kiora, I don't know what all self-mill they're going to end up putting in this set. It is really easy to imagine that there's a little bit of self-mill here or there. And if you're able to dump a few extra cards into your graveyard with that, you know, without that even being the real cost that you're paying, I just think that there's so many of the best creatures technically have 2 or less power when they're in your graveyard. You know, like, for instance, Toolcraft Exemplar, Thraben Inspector, Thalia's Lieutenant.
Oh, maybe this is just an awesome card for, like, White Weenie / Mardu to side in against Black-Green.
Sure.
Like,
absolutely. Kill all their stuff, right?
Yeah.
This card is kind of a weird card to me. There's like something...
It's a weird casting cost for what you want it to do, but it has a high ceiling.
It's like the Brain Geyser part is the part I keep coming back to, though, man. There's something about this that is really setting off alarm bells. This doesn't... I mean, obviously, I have no idea what the other 200-something cards in this set are, but this doesn't look right to me, man. Like, maybe it's okay. This is really, really making me suspicious that this card generally this looks like a bad idea. Not a bad idea for us to use now that it's real. This card looks very likely. This is just an above average likely card to be problematic for reasons.
Well,
so this is this is my pick. This is you go with the 2-cost 2/2. I'm going to go with Dusk Till Dawn. I think Dusk Till Dawn is one to keep an eye on.
Josh once criticized me for saying he's like the kind of cards he likes are a Mind's Desire. The kind of card I like are a Werebear. Like and there ain't nothing wrong with a Werebear. You know?
No. What? And Werebear, when you identify a good Werebear, it's gonna like. A promising Werebear turns out to be a great card a lot of the time. Most Mind's Desires are unspeakably bad. But some of them are broken. You know?
Speaking of possibly unspeakably bad, possibly broken, do you want to finish up on Oracle's Vault?
Oracle's Vault is a 4-cost artifact. You can pay 2 and tap it to exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card, and then put a brick in the wall. Then put a brick counter on Oracle's Vault. And by the way, I want to just note that, like, sometimes it's going to be like a good top-down where you're going to brick. And sometimes you're just going to be getting a brick even though you didn't brick. But there's a second ability, which is tap. It's just the same ability. It's just that you don't have to spend the 2 mana, and you can only do that if you've already put 3 bricks in the wall. So when you first play this card, it's like an Elkin Bottle, which is kind of an older, it's an older card, but it checks out. It's 4 colorless. The original Elkin Bottle was 3+3. This one's 4+2.
4+2 is way better than 3+3.
I think 4+2 it's not. I don't know if it's way better, but it is definitely better. I think it's better. It's meaningfully better. But this one has the upside of eventually you go ballistic, right? Because you start getting it for free. And the thing that's interesting to me about this card is that many people will wrongly assume this is Chandra's ability. Chandra can't play land. Oracle's Vault can actually play land. That's interesting, right? I mean, obviously Chandra also goes upstairs for 2.
I like this card a lot, I think. I mean, I hesitate to say that I'm happy to pay the 2 mana just to get the bricks, right? But it's possible that you could just be happy to do that if you're planning to play a very long game. Because once you have the bricks, the card is ridiculous, right? It's just basically tap, draw card. And, you know, as long as you play your cards in the correct order, it's always free. You know, like, you just don't want to play land and then use Oracle's Vault unless you have a very good reason for it, right? You know, there are reasons that, you know what the top card of your library is, for example. But I think this, I imagine situations of the kind of decks that you like to play, you know, maybe a year or 2 in the past, you know, some of those control-type Abzan decks instead of aggro Abzan decks, where you had this interplay of Courser of Kruphix and Temples and Elspeths, you know, where you're just, like, accumulating value-laden material on the battlefield and then just putting together, you know, all these resources that would allow you to overcome a wide variety of different opponents. You know what I'm talking about, right? Like, your same deck, you could fight mono red and fight blue control and fight combo decks, and you know, we have not seen a deck like that in Standard since, I think, Magic Origins rotated. Like, where you just have one deck, it does 20 things, and it does 15 of those things potentially well. But I could just see some of these cards coming together into making that kind of a deck. Is this reminiscent at all for you, for the kind of the Courser of Kruphix and Temple and Abzan Charm days?
No, definitely not.
Okay.
Sorry to hate. No, to me, the Courser of Kruphix experience was predicated on extremely small opportunity costs. I'm sorry, man. This card to me just looks like another James Day Tome.
I mean, James Day Tome had a day, man. I
know, it did, definitely. I don't think that day is today. Oracle's Vault is better than James Day Tome, but I think this card is sweet. It would be fun to play with. I think, to me, this is not like, this doesn't look like a card that's going to end up being good. It might be decent enough to play, because it might be, first of all, this is totally textbook, the type of thing that people, you know, like you have your blue-black control deck and you stick this in your sideboard because you want to have a diverse mix of threats and proactive ways to generate an advantage, and other people are trying to attack your Obnixilis, or they're trying to attack your Torrential Gear Hulk, and then you also have Oracle's Vault to help get an advantage. But it also just doesn't work very well with counterspells, who are the people who would most want to take advantage of a thing like this. So you probably
the kind of deck that you're talking about, it's a direct conflict with just, you know, a value-based Aetherworks Marvel, right? Like, they both cost 4, and it's not hard for those decks just to get the requisite energy to use Marvel. And Marvel's paying that kind of deck better than Oracle's Vault would pay them.
Yeah, I think
specifically around Instance.
This card is cute. It might be fine. It's not like it's terrible. It's still, I mean, people said negative things about Elkin Bottle too. It's totally fine.
I believe Inquest said it was constructed unplayable, so Mark Justice decided to play it.
Yeah, but they said it was just
one, and then
like the only right. But the only 2 cards in the set that they rated lower than it were Demonic Consultation and Necropotence.
Editors of Inquest.
So both those
cards have been banned.
And I got love for Inquest. I love for Inquest. That was like such a, you know, instrumental part of my childhood Magic experience. But you know, they a little bit missed the mark in Ice Age. A little bit. We could end on this note, but there is at least one more card. It's relatively minor, but I just thought it was too cute not to mention, and that's Dune Beetle, man. Dune Beetle's it's 1 in a black for a 1/4. Done. Full stop.
I want to say this card is great.
Great?
Great. I want to say this card is great.
What's stopping you?
Like, this is my context, right? River Kaijin and Horn Turtle, 1/4 for 3 mana, both have made top 8 of Premier Event level play. Now, obviously, we're talking about making top 8 of Premier Event level play in smaller formats, upwards of 10 to even 20 years ago. But, I don't know. Like,
Counterpoint, Plated Strider is a 2 mana 1/4 in more recent of times that wasn't exactly a major player.
But Plated Strider
admittedly,
it was, right?
Right. It was. This is 1 and a B, so it's both easier to cast and potentially, maybe this color cares about it more. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. This card seems like a spectacular way to slow down 2/1s, 3/2s, 3/1s. Like I said, I want to say it's great, but I'm not.
Okay, let me ask you something.
Sure
Let me ask you something.
I can say that it's great.
Let me ask you something. Do you consider a 2/3 vanilla for 2 to be good?
Do I consider a 2/3 vanilla for 3?
For 2.
Oh, for 2? I consider a 2/3 vanilla like an Elvish Warrior, right?
Right.
I think.
Well, let's say an easier to cast one. It's just 1 in a green.
Yeah, I mean, Elvish Warrior is. I don't know. I find that to be barely playable.
Right. Now, what about...
It's playable, but barely playable.
If you need a synergy or something.
Yeah, you need to be able to get it for free in your deck, right?
So what about
Elves or something like that?
Like, nobody really played 1 in a green for a 3/2 vanilla, right?
No. But that's the wrong colors, right? You could usually get 3/3 or better in that color for that much mana.
This is a color that gets stuff like Dark Confidant, man.
All
like,
right.
you can get the energy guy.
The energy guy doesn't fight Dune Beetle very well.
No. He dodges him, though. He's got Menace.
Fair enough.
Menace is something.
Yeah, but they don't fight well.
Anyway.
I think that Dune Beetle... I think that depending on your color combination, I think, like, even the things that I'm imagining Dune Beetle doing, like, True Heart Duelist does a better job. Right? I think that's... I don't know. Like I said, I want to say it's great, but I'm hesitant to actually say it's great.
Yeah, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's not great. So, in that case, I'm sorry. This is seriously the last one.
Seriously.
Fling. It's just a reprint, not a whole lot that we need to get into this second. It'll be interesting when we see more stuff in the set, but I do want to know right out the gate, Wandering Ephemeral plus Crackdown Construct plus Fling.
Game.
That's pretty good, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are other infinite combos so you can play also. Maybe you can play them together.
Yeah, that's it. I just think it's cute. Just want to keep an eye on.
I don't think you need to be infinite Fling, right? You could just go to 5 or 7, and you probably win a turn early.
Well, no, one of the things that makes Fling so cute is you know that all that Kari's expertise stuff?
Yeah.
Let me steal your guy, and then fling it at you. With just 3 mana, you can literally double terminate. Because you're stealing something. You don't get to attack with it because you're flinging immediately. But you can steal it and then fling it at something else. So you just for 3 mana can kill 2 things. Or go upstairs, kill a Planeswalker.
Well,
I think that's legitimately good.
To that point, maybe it's just giving you critical mass to play some of these cards and play those cards in concert, right? Like, maybe Karizev's expertise is the best, but there are other threatens. There's, Eldrazi Obligator. All of a sudden, you just start playing enough of those cards together. Maybe some kind of guys that sacrifice guys, etc. Maybe there's an Aristocrats deck that we haven't seen before. Something like that.
Could be. I can see him black on the phone. Could be. All right. Awesome, man. I'm excited. There is some cool stuff, and it's going to be. I'm looking forward to some new puzzles to solve.
I agree. You know what I like about the cards we've seen so far?
What's that?
Some of them, like True Heart Duelist, obviously value laden for a reasonable price. Like, they're in the vein of cards like River Boa, right? Like mana war. They're in the zone of those kind of cards. Not too expensive, not so spectacular of an ability, but like they can get you an advantage, and especially if you're positioning them correctly. Alongside the flashy cards we've seen so far, at least in terms of the straightforward ones, like Archfiend of Ifnir and Glorybringer, are the kinds of cards that are designed to generate value while elongating games and creating interaction. And those are both different things that I like a lot about playing specifically standard but constructed formats in general. Versus the different kinds of cards that are also good, where they compact a whole bunch of something, typically damage, right, in a small amount of mana, right? And I think that's very different than what we've seen for the past maybe 3 to 5 sets.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because, don't get me wrong, Toolcraft Exemplar is powerful when you're just doing 3 damage for 1 mana. And Heart of Kirin just doing 4 damage a turn for 2 mana with lots of abilities. Okay,
evasion and freeness and haste, right, basically.
There's some sweetness to having some of your power spread out in ways like, for instance, a little resiliency against removal, the versatility of having cycling, the options to choose to be able to exert. You know?
Yeah, I love formats where you have a little space, but then you also have an ability to mitigate both flood and screw, right? Like, I think that limited formats with cycling, for example, I tend to like it where the creatures are a little bit less powerful at the low end of the drops, but then give you other things that are interesting. I mean, obviously cards like Glorybringer are going to be absolutely bananas and limited, but there's always going to be Busto rares in every set.
All right, well, cool stuff. I'm looking forward to seeing what the next week brings. We've actually got a little something special coming up too, don't we?
Yeah, not till end of next week, but it'll be there. It'll be 2 episodes until then.
All right. So, everybody, if you guys can check us out next week, here or however you found us this time, but also spread the good word. We're everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, Michael J. Flores' house. If you want to stop by, say hi.
Patrick's house too, or I don't know, apartment. Do you have an apartment?
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe don't show up at my apartment. It would
be awkward.
Or let me know. Tweet at me first before you show up, so I can at least make something.
And then we're all those places. So if you want to tweet, Facebook, share, carrier pigeon, whatever you got, we'd appreciate it. And subscribe.
Honestly, don't carry your pigeon right now, though. It's a tough time. Like, soon, I think you can get back into the carrier pigeons, but I think right now, first of all, windmills. But second of all, that's part of it. But second of all, there's a second. So the new kind of windmills are they're going to start being rapidly adopted over the course of the next 5 years, and I think it's game on for carrier pigeons again. The new windmills that vibrate, they don't have blades. It's all just, you should check it out. There's new windmills. I swear to you, this is real. The carrier pigeon part's not actually a very big part of the component, but
that wasn't part of their calculus in designing the new windmills.
Well, I think that yes, it was part of the calculus in that they are less disruptive to birds in general. And so for that, I think it's going to be a net positive to the environment outside of the fact that they're just win-win-win-win all the way around. Unrelated, top-level podcast next week. See you guys then.
Bye-bye.
Life didn't work so great. Tried to play Dredge for jail or hate. Ghostly prison waiting for my untapped phase. Your core trapped in amber stasis state. Lost a lot of friends, got left behind. Had to find a way not to lose my mind. Trapped in